Welcome back, everybody, to What's Up Enterprise, Comerit's podcast, where we interview some of the thought leaders in data analytics, artificial intelligence, and really all the top technology that people are deploying around the world. Today, we have a special guest, Mike Bowers, who's been working in technology, doing software and architecture for probably 35 years. Mike, do I have that correct?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's a long
That's
time.
awesome. Yeah, well, I'm really glad to talk to you about that because over 35 years, I'm sure you've seen many, many changes. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to go through today. We had a preliminary, interesting conversation earlier about some of the things your company's doing at FairCom, but just I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective. And before I get into all the great details, Mike, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, give our audience a bit of your background. I think it's fascinating, and all the things you've done. So we'll let you just go to it.
All right. Well, yeah, I started programming actually when I was young, 14 years old, which is way more than 35 years ago,
Wow.
um, almost like 45 years actually. And I just love programming computers. I begged my dad for a PC back then, and so I started then. I started professionally though 10 years later, when I was in grad school. Um, the I was actually a music major. Ironically enough, I majored in music and piano and composition, music theory, um, and so I chose this grade because piano is a big part of my life. And but I worked my way through grad school programming computers. And back in those days, there is a lot of small business programming done in programs like DBase and FoxPro and Clipper and Microsoft Access for building solutions for the small business. And they were all in one solutions. And you could build an application in days or weeks that would take literally months or years today because everything was in all in one. And so that's kind of shaped my whole career because I've done development in so many languages, not every language, there's too many languages, but in dozens of languages. I've built products for major companies, small companies. I built compilers. I've worked in manufacturing. One of my fun stories is I worked at Freightliner, which was purchased by Mercedes, and some of you know about the Sprinter van. So the Mercedes or Freightliner, it's the same vehicle. It's just they put different labels on it, either Freightliner or Mercedes. But that van, it's a large cargo van. It has a computer in it that runs everything. Well, I wrote the compiler that programs that van. So I wrote a language and a compiler for the language that literally compiles down to the machine code that runs on that van that controls everything on the van. We push on the brake, you run the windshield wipers, everything's run through the computer. So that's one extreme example of low-level programming. And then I built application frameworks that are used by companies to, in fact, Freightliner again asked me to build an application framework for them. It was it competed with ASP.NET. They wanted to use it instead of ASP.NET and IBM's um, web. I forgot the name of it. Their big app servers framework. So that was fun for a while. But I said, go with the big guys. Don't use my little framework. But it was fun to build these big systems for companies. And my last job, I ended up becoming the data architect for a large multi-billion-dollar international corporation in charge of all their database technologies. And I've been a data fanatic my whole career. I love data. So I'm a developer, but I love to work with data and design data. It kind of works with my music background of music composition and music theory. And so that, believe it or not, those two, data modeling and software development, go nicely with music composition and music theory. So it just fits me really well. So I became a NoSQL expert as well as a SQL expert. At one point in my career, I was an Oracle DBA, SQL Server DBA, worked with all the major SQL databases. And then we started moving into the NoSQL world and became an expert in all those technologies. I started presenting at conferences around the world, um, and about a new data model that I created. And FairCom saw me at these conferences, and they wanted to bring me aboard to become their data architect, their chief architect for FairCom. And FairCom's a software company, and they wanted to build my vision of a next generation database solution. So I was hired 6 years ago. I was recruited away from that large company. It was a great job, but I've got another great job now building my dream database solution. And in the process here, we've built way more than that. We have enhanced the FairCom database to become a JSON database with a new JSON API that is easier to use than Mongo. And then we've also built a data integration platform with message queues and also database and web services built in all in one in the same platform that is a translator, like a and like Star Trek has the translator for all the different languages automatically, the universal translator. Well, this is like a universal translator for all data integration because you can convert between web services, SQL, and messages. No matter how data comes in, you can get it out the other way, which is bizarre because you think about a web service call turning into a SQL statement or a SQL statement querying your web services or a message queue querying SQL. All of those things are possible in this universal translator platform. And then we're using that in the edge for manufacturing because I have a strong manufacturing background. And so factories are using this integration platform to collect data from their equipment and integrate it, enhance the value of it, transform the data, and deliver it to IT systems and take data from IT systems and push it to the manufacturing floor because it's a universal translator. So we've built a ton of stuff at FairCom based on all my experience over the last 35 professional years.
So I'm going to step back a little bit because I find your background is very interesting, and you talk a little bit about how music actually impacts your architectural design, maybe development around software. I actually have a minor in music also, but
Oh,
I,
super.
I, I got my background primarily. I studied at UC Davis. It's a very agricultural based school, but I was going to become a medical doctor. But I had some extra time, and so I sang in the choir, and that's how I got my music background.
Right.
I didn't really play any instruments then. I do now. And I understand what you mean because I've been just recently, I spent a lot of time trying to learn how can I make music on this guitar? And there's all these things on the fretboards and things come together, but there's easy ways in which you can tie things together, and then there's difficult ways in which you can tie things together. And so
Yeah.
I'm very interested. Maybe we'll get into that on another time, but I see the complexities. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how music has influenced you specifically with you designing something that's like, it's something that's new to me, and I've been doing this whole database transactional type optimization for probably 25, 26 years. And then I came across FairCom and I thought, wait, I've worked with all the databases. I've not heard of FairCom. And you explained to me, like, FairCom's being used in some pretty big places.
Yeah, yeah. FairCom has been we've been an OEM database, so we've been embedded in other systems. And Faircom's an engineering company, so marketing was kind of like, who needs marketing, right? That's not a very smart business thing, to be honest. But it was a great. That's what I love about Faircom is we are an engineering first
Yeah, that's
company.
awesome. Hmm.
And so it's only been recently that we hired a marketing team and a sales team that really does traditional marketing and sales.
So that's
But we've
why I
been
hear
doing
about you now.
yeah, so it's why I'm on the podcast. But
Wow,
but
awesome.
before that, we sold word of mouth, and in fact we were very profitable. We have no debt. We are privately owned because we have a great product. but it's kind of one of those industry secrets because people who use us don't want to tell others because we're like their secret
Secret.
sauce.
That's the
Yeah,
secret sauce. I get
it,
it.
yeah, because we are so fast. Because we built our engine, our database engine back in the day when you had an old 8086 PC that was so slow, it's ridiculous, right? But we were fast on those old technologies, which means
Wow.
today we are so screaming fast on the new technologies that it makes all the other databases look really bad. And and so that's why these companies who use us, like Verizon today, um, there's some companies I'm not supposed to name,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
the
figured
number
there's
one,
probably
you
you
know,
could name some
because
of
this
them.
is
That's
secret
okay.
sauce. But like, the number one manufacturing of chips in the world refuses to use anything but our database in their manufacturing process because we're so reliable and so fast. And they have opportunities to use Oracle, SQL Server, and other data. Won't
They all
touch it.
chosen FairCom.
Um,
Interesting.
every flight in the U.S. is tracked in real time by the FAA using their product using our database underneath. You ship If you ship products in the U.S., it's being tracked in our database. Until
Wow.
recently, every visa transaction in Europe was tracked in real time in our database, and they were running over 500,000 transactions per second on a single server, and never had downtime. And I went to London when I was first hired and met with the DBAs that were running it, and they're like, "We're terrified because this thing never breaks." And you think, well, isn't that a good thing? Well, it's a bad thing when it never breaks, and if it did break, you would never have a clue what to do. Of course, we have 24/7 support, so
Yeah.
they did have one time their disk space ran out. It had nothing to do with the database, other than databases need disk space, so it wasn't working. So they had to fix that. But our support's there, and they were great. The Visa US took over the European Visa, so that they no longer use our product. They use a whole mishmash of complex technologies in the US. And that's what we do. Is Faircom's product is so simple, so fast. And now it is easy because I built a whole new JSON API on it that's easier than Mongo, easier than Couchbase, as you get our speed and you get the simplicity uh, of a of a JSON database. And we have we're all in one. So kind of this all in one theme is really important to me. So we are at the same time a SQL database, a JSON database, and our original technology is based on ISAM, which is a really fast older technology, but it's harder to use. So I took the speed of the ISAM, made it into JSON, which is easy. We kept the SQL. So now you have a 100% ANSI SQL database with the speed of the JSON and the speed of the ISAM and the simplicity of the JSON, all in one product with the same data at the same time. And then we added the messaging with MQTT, and now you also have this new feature with messaging into play that changes everything for our MQ product line for Universal Translator.
So what happened? You woke up one day and you're like, I have a better idea. I know how to make this work even faster, smoother. How did that
Well,
happen? Did you have a
yeah.
dream about it or what?
Oh, totally. For when I was working my previous job, that large multinational corporation, they being the data architect with thousands of engineers, literally thousands of developers, I'm using using the database products that I decided on, that I recommended, and they also the integration problems. You can imagine when you have thousands of applications, thousands of developers building solutions, trying to integrate their data is really a problem. So I now worked at that company for over 10 years. And so it was a real challenge trying to get everything integrated. And so we looked at every integration tool on the market, from IBM's WebSphere tools to their DataSphere tools. We had Oracle's tools. I guess I shouldn't be name dropping all these other competitors of
Yeah,
FairCom,
yeah.
but
No,
anyway,
but
the point is
okay,
we use
yeah,
everything.
right.
So we had
That's
a
pretty
lot
much what
more.
every shop looks like.
Right. We had business objects. We had all these tools integrating data.
You even did some
And
work with SAP, I
we
understand.
did. Yeah. We had SAP there and PeopleSoft. I mean, this is such a huge organization. We had
Sure.
everything. And we were trying to integrate all that data, and there was no universal translator. If you were in the developer world, you wanted to use web integrations, of course, web services. So
Makes
you'd use like MuleSoft. We had MuleSoft there.
mhm,
And then when you go to the database world, you use ETL tools.
right.
And that's where well, we used several tools, so I won't name them all. And then we had and then we also brought in messaging. So we used AMQP, we used RabbitMQ for that. And these three technologies, the SQL integration tools with ETL, don't work with the web services. They don't talk to each other. The web services tools don't talk to the SQL well. They all have connectors that bridge the gap, but they're so terrible, and they're just different paradigms. They're fundamentally different things that just don't translate. And then the message queue is just this third party weird thing out on the side that didn't play it nice with either of the other ones. So what I started thinking, how can we solve this problem? And I came up with a solution that bridges all of them together. If you can merge all three technologies into one and using a certain way, which is FairCom's secret sauce now, because I brought that to FairCom, that then you can literally bridge in a universal way all three technologies seamlessly, automatically with no work. And so that's what I've built. That's what I designed for FairCom, and FairCom engineers built it. And it works so great. It's so nice to have. You can send a message through a message queue in and query that message with SQL. You can insert a record with SQL and have it go out as a message. You can do this, insert a record with SQL and have it go out and have it push the results to a REST endpoint. A REST endpoint can come in and query, or an application come in and query through REST and query the data in the SQL, or query MQ, or push send MQ messages. No matter how you work, no matter where you are, the other two technologies work automatically with you without you having to write all kinds of code. It's just all configuration driven and APIs, and so easy. It's all JSON. I got to show a demo to you guys sometime, because the JSON code is so easy. Just a few lines of
Wow.
JSON, boom, it works.
Yeah, I'd love to. Maybe we'll have you back on, and I'd love to have some of my architects come on also and observe
Yeah,
what you're doing. Because i- i- in technology, we know that we don't know everything, especially if you're only exposed to one perspective in the world. The
yeah,
old saying, right? If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, kind of thing. Well,
totally. It's so
and that
true.
and that totally happens. And I see this is sort of the hypothesis that not only I have, but I surrounded myself with a bunch of experts. I don't code myself, but I have a good understanding of like what it means to really extrapolate or harmonize all this data so that it has an opportunity to truly modernize, our work processes, right? So if you have it all there harmonized, then now we can start to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning, NLP. These are all things now that have become very popular. We've been doing a lot of these things for the past 20 years, but now it's like when people get home, hey, how come I can't do this at work? I can just ask my computer for whatever question and I get that, right? So there's this expectation now that, hey, why can't I do that with my data? Why do I need to write a report? Why can't I just query my data the way I would ask my colleague who's working in that business department and get the exact insight that I need so that I won't make a mistake in the action I'm about to take? Technically, that's what you're thinking could happen.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
but the reality is what you mentioned, bringing all of these, you know, thousands and thousands, sometimes millions of rows of data coming from multiple line pipelines, multiple transaction systems. The
Mhm.
reality is that in most cases, you don't have this consolidated, harmonized data set that you can easily, securely, without risk and properly governed information that you get back without hallucination, right? These are all
Right.
these are all the things that we hear. that are going on out there. And then when I spoke to you, you mentioned, hey, well, we can do a lot of these things now. And I was like, really? Because we're working on these things, and we have found solutions. And some of the companies that we already mentioned are doing tremendous work and actually making it happen. But from my perspective, it's not fast enough because
Mhm.
we're not able to deploy. Um, I have lots of great ideas. CEOs have fantastic ideas, but the reality is, it are the data sets truly ready and enabled? That's really what it
Yeah.
boils down to.
And the thing that's
So,
stopping it today is this division in the IT world. There's a massive chasm between the data guys, the database administrators, and who have and the business intelligence, or now they're called data engineers, who
engineers,
take those data engineers can take the data from other databases, bring it into a warehouse or bring it into a data lake and do amazing things on it. But and they can, and once you bring it in and you organize it into a data warehouse, especially, you can do all kinds of machine learning and artificial intelligence on it. But just because it's structured in a way that can work, but to bring that data into the data warehouse requires a massive amount of extraction. You have to extract data from all kinds of other systems.
yeah,
Well,
for sure.
back in the day, about 20 years ago, everybody focused first on database. Databases were the first thing you did. You designed, when you built an application, you designed your database. You structured your database to hold the data, and your business rules for the data rules were in the database. That allowed this whole model of database to database extraction. You could extract the data, transform it, load it, and make a warehouse. But then the industry started shifting, and the developers said, "Well, we don't want to waste our time building data models. That's boring. We want to build cool user interfaces." And at the same time, Agile came in. I said, "Well, let's build a user interface that we can quickly change, rapidly evolve. Just evolve, evolve, evolve." Well, once you do that, your data model is kind of like thrown into the back. It's just, okay, we don't need a database anymore. We want a bit bucket. Let's just throw our
Right.
bits in this bucket over
Yeah.
here. And the app
Yeah.
is king. And as that shifted
Yeah.
from the database, it was
Over to the
king, to
yep.
the app,
Yeah.
the data started getting neglected. And then
Falls apart. Yep.
it started falling apart. Well, but the integration technology shifted to say, well, let's build web services
Right.
and integrate through web services. Now, the web service world rules, that's where you get your data, through the web service, not the database. So there's a whole industry around integrating data at web services. The challenge with that is that services are islands, and you have to talk over the network, and getting lots of data transmitted across the network is hard. It's
Yeah.
slow. It's
It's slow.
very
Yeah.
slow. Well, a database is fast because it can have terabytes of data sitting locally,
Right.
and it's working inside the same computer using the computer's cache, and it can process data more quickly. But when you go to the web service layer, it can't. And the developers don't like to talk about that, because they'll say, well, I'll just go get all the data, and it takes forever to pull the data from one web service into another so you could join it together and get an answer. Well, it doesn't work real well. Then the tools don't work well, because the database tools talk to databases great, but they don't talk to web services. They can't get data into and out of web services well, because they're just two different worlds. And so this chasm between the web service world and the database world is the core problem. That's the problem I found that no one was solving. And I went to IBM's headquarters. We had CEO briefings, and they would bring in all their teams. And it was so funny. IBM brought in their WebSphere team, which is all the web services stuff. And they talked to me about integration and all that stuff. And then they bring in the InfoSphere team, which is all about the data. And then we do the same technology techniques, but different technologies, the same integration techniques in a whole different set of teams. Those teams weren't even communicating to
Hmm.
each other because they're in different worlds. And I'm going, I have to bridge those worlds. So that's when that was about 15, 16 years ago, when I was at IBM's headquarters in California at this executive briefing. And because they were trying to sell the company I work for all these tools, right? So there it was really fascinating. Then I went to Microsoft, had the same experience. This divide between the web world and the data world is so huge that it's breaking our integrations. And because the developers now want to go to the web world and it's got all those problems with trying to move lots of data, it is stopping the ability to get the data to where it needs to be, which is a data warehouse or data lake where you can do machine learning and artificial intelligence on it. So that's why I built the FairCom MQ product, which integrates all those things into one. So you truly, there's no chasm anymore. It is a web service, a database, and a message queue are all the same thing, literally the same thing in our product. But it took me,
Wow.
no one else can do it. A SQL database can't do that. But FairCom's engine has the ability to go that low level for me to design something completely different and unique. And
Wow.
we were able to pull it off. So we have all those features in one.
So, Mike, you don't. So, you do you remember the elevator story that people in these high-rise buildings used to complain? They're like, "Well, I love living in the penthouse or this really tall buildings, but then, I push the button and I'm waiting for the elevator for so long." So the
That's it.
fix was they put the mirror there, and then everyone stopped. No one cared that the elevator took long because people were looking at themselves in the mirror. So you don't have to do that in your case. No mirror tricks. There's no mirror
Yeah.
tricks.
Yeah. It's
I was
exactly.
gonna
That's
say because
exactly it.
like,
I love that.
the other one. So I thought of another solution in case that's still the problem, right? What you do now is you tell people, well, okay, yeah, this is taking really long. I'm querying this data. I'm trying to get this information, and I don't know if I have bottlenecks. I say, oh, those aren't bottlenecks. Those are what we call chain of thought processing in artificial intelligence, right? So no, it's not slow. We want to go through all of the thought processes. So this isn't slow at all. That's the other
I love
solution.
it. I
Uh,
love it.
but
Oh,
yeah, so I mean, no, this is fantastic, Mike. I'd love to have you on with some of our architects to really talk through. Because I think, I don't know if you saw the recent interview with Jensen Wang, and he talked about what he did 10 years ago and why NVIDIA is so far ahead. They're thinking on a whole nother
mhm.
level. And I didn't
Yeah.
get a chance to really dissect that, but I thought, that it's good for conversation because I do believe there's a paradigm shift occurring.
Mhm.
Something did change, right? So they're
Yeah.
now being able to do things. And I wanted to get into that. We're running really close up to the amount of time that I had scheduled for this. So it's likely I'm going to have to, if you wouldn't mind, love to have you back on and then really
Yeah.
talk through some of these things, what you've been able to creatively figure out, but then also talk to you about what you think um, is the reality for companies as we embrace this new world of technology, right? And I'm speaking about
Mhm.
specifically around insights to action, true NLP, computer vision, or large action models, right? We're no
Mhm.
longer asking for the answers. We're now asking this automation, the artificial intelligence to take action, right? So this is where I think things are going. But
Mhm.
if you're going to do that, I still believe the human mind's truly incredible. I mentioned my background was started really anatomy physiology with some music, but we still can process a lot of data very quickly and make determinations and even have this thing called intuition. So
Yeah.
uh, those things are still very cool to me that we have this capability. Simultaneously, I am watching advancements, stuff like what you're doing, right? You've removed some bottlenecks that will allow us to get closer to this type of uh, it's hard for me to say it's artificial intelligence, but it's really, in my opinion, it's data optimization, being able to
Mhm.
process lots of data for some um, really optimized insights and actions, like the way we do it. I don't know,
Mhm.
honestly, Mike, I could have this conversation with some artificial intelligence. I've actually been testing it, but there's something missing from when you and I are talking. There's some processing that I don't know that will capture an AI yet. I
Yeah,
will never say never. I think it's coming.
right.
Never say never. But I'm fascinated that, for example, your mind, your creativity did come up with some solutions around seemingly years and years worth of problems that I still see today in
Mhm.
organizations with a growing number of pipelines or data volumes, right? Types of data. I don't see that problem going away anytime soon. That's why, I wanted to talk to you and hear how you've solved this. And um, like I mentioned, I'd love to have you back on with some of our engineers that can really have this, whatever conversations they'll allow us to have, but to talk through it, because I think we are at the dawn of a new opportunity around how we deal with these large data volumes growing. I don't think data is going to slow down.
Oh,
That's
it's getting huge. It's
getting
with
huge.
IoT, it's getting bigger. And one of
Yeah.
your points, the human brain organizes information. That's one of our wonderful strengths that we can do. And once you organize information, you can answer questions that you
Yeah.
can't answer if it's not organized. And that's what people do who are in the data engineering space. They organize data to answer questions. Once you do that, machine learning, artificial intelligence can go in to look at the organized data, and then it will see the relationships and answer your questions. But humans today need to organize that. Now,
True.
in the future, we can have augmented experiences where the machine can help us organize it. But the real problem is getting the data because it takes forever. We had BI engineers in my last job take years to get data out of web services and try to get it into a data warehouse. It's that hard. It takes
Yes.
years. The new system, I wanted to solve that where you could just literally point and go and it gets you the data, because a year of paying a full-time engineer is expensive, and you pay a team of engineers and then you pay them for a year to go get some data. That's a lot of money and you're
A lot of money.
waiting around for it.
Yeah.
And then did they get the right data? Then they go, no, not quite. Let's get some more data. And it's just go back and forth. We got to
Totally.
turn a year turnaround into a day,
Right.
not a year.
Right.
And that's what I've been trying to build, and that's what I've been. Well, my last job I was trying to get done. Now I finally FairCom built it, and I'm so excited about it.
Wow, fantastic. I can't wait. I'd love to do just like a mind share with some of our engineers, because we this is truly stuff that we're working on. And some of our constraints are truly they form around I think sometimes it's the stakeholders have tools that they can only leverage certain tools. They have licensing challenges. There's all sorts of different things. But as consultants at Comerit, we're always thinking through the most creative way to resolve those bottlenecks. And I think that's truly what we bring to the table. But I'm always like, I know that as a collective group of engineers and thought leaders, we will continue to accelerate our capabilities around how we process data. And this is why I want to do these podcasts, because I,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not, I am smart enough to know that will never have all the answers, but likely all the answers are probably held within individuals creative and with the creative mind and thought leadership such as yourself. So, Mike, we ran out of time, but I really appreciate this. Is a great call. Love to have you on again. Super fun. I'm sure my team, when they see this, are going to have lots of questions. So,
Awesome. Yeah.
but yeah, thank you very much for joining me. And I know I reached out just hoping to learn something new, and certainly did learn some new stuff. And I look forward to us. We'll get you back on the calendar and have you back on.
Super. I look forward to it, David. This is great.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on your success there. And I know there's probably much more that you'll continue to develop. And I'm glad that we had a chance to meet.